I do want to introduce a couple of guests that we have with us. I have Catherine Fields and Lori Christopher, both with GRSP. And they're going to come up and I guess Catherine's going to come up and talk a minute about the GRSP program. I'm going to pull up the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Thank you for this opportunity. Can you hear me? It's not working? I can talk louder than this anyway. All right, first I have to settle some business. Somebody in the room is a Barry Viking. Woohoo, my favorite person. Barry, I'm sure we graduated. President-elect, double reason to like you. And the fact that I'm sure we graduated in, 90 together. All right. First, I wanted to tell you that as part of Georgia Rotary Student Program strategic planning, hiring a marketing and development director was one of the things on their list. And so I stand here today, very new in this position, but very aware of why my position was needed to be able to go around and just sprinkle the goodness of what our program has been doing for the past 75 years. And for those of you who are, I am kind of preaching to the choir here because I saw on your banner for your Rotary Club that GRSP was at the top. And so I'm thankful that I don't have to work hard. In this presentation, I wanted you to see that we have a new logo, the very top. You can see that we have branded a new look. Are they able to see online also? Okay. You can see that we have branded a new look, and it's pretty much similar with the GRSP lettering, but also approved by Rotary International, incorporating the wheel and the districts. Our vision has not changed. Our vision is to develop leaders to promote peace and understanding throughout the world. And if you haven't seen our website, I certainly would direct you there. It has undergone a nice and much needed facelift. From there, some of you may or may not have attended. The picture at the top is when Rotary International came to Atlanta, and the first time we had a reunion of students. And so in that, I love that picture because it shows you the melting pot of GRSP, that our students are represented around the world. And we are celebrating our 75th year. We were founded in 1946 by Thomas Rotarian Will Watt, and I will enhance that detail in a minute. And that our mission is to build goodwill through friendships and build cultural exchange with foreign countries. And our students, we started out in 1947 with a class of 4. We jokingly said we were going to get back to that this year, but we are believing for more than 4, and we'll talk about that in a minute also. First, you should already know that if you are new to GRSP, that Rotary International does not fund GRSP, that we are solely supported by Rotarians and independent businesses throughout the state contributing. The student does contribute to the program. They have skin in the game, meaning that their round trip airfare, spending money, medical insurance, and any outstanding fees come through that. A host family and host club. And in this room, I already met some people who said, we've been a host family, we've been a host club. I can only just tell you, I appreciate you and just the legacy that you have built through this program. GRSP continues to sponsor a student this year. The match for GRSP is $6,000. And part of my job is to generate additional funds so that we can continue to increase that number as we grow the GRSP Foundation, formerly known as the Endowment Fund. And so through that support, we are able to continue to give back to clubs, and then voluntary contributions, which I've left some on the table. We'll talk about that in a minute. I talk fast and I'm going fast because I'm condensing this. There's a new program. I don't know if Dr. Venable's on the call today or not, but I shout out to Gordon State. I was at Gordon State. Shout out to Dalton State College for their steadfast participation and assistance. And this program may be something that your partner clubs, I know that you've steadily sent a student to Dalton State, but your partner clubs may be interested in the direct college selection. And I'll get to that in the next slide. But we are now offering basically 2 avenues to GRSP. Both avenues, the standard selection and the direct college selection, the criteria is the same. All the students have to be 18 to 25, not have studied in the U.S. longer than 4 months, not be married, and not hold dual citizenship. The funds are always sent to the institution, not the individual, to be applied to their account, and Rotarians will serve as host families for both students. It's just the avenue with which they arrive. The first is the standard selection. You're nominated by your home Rotary club, the country, and you submit through the website. The clubs commit commitment sheets. They identify their prospects. They select their student. The student accepts the agreement, and GRSP assists in the admissions process. We are not able to apply for the students because of FERPA and HIPAA laws, but we certainly assist them in that process. And then the students arrive in August for conclave and begin classes. And for those of you who might have a touch to higher education, these students are considered transient students, not necessarily degree seeking. And here's where the differences lie in the next selection. The direct college selection shows a picture right there of you, Miriam. She was our first student from Ethiopia who attended Oglethorpe University. The Rotarians decide on a partial amount of a scholarship, and they partner with a college or university. The Rotary Club has to put up a minimum of $5,000, and GRSP will match it up to $6,000. So say your partner clubs wanted to be able to offer $5,000, GRSP would offer $5,000, we would offer a $10,000 scholarship. At Dalton State College, it's going to go a little further than it might at Berry, just saying. So in that regard, it does for a club who maybe hasn't been able to continue financially to support a student, it serves as two purposes. Number one, the next line is the part that makes this program different. The school notifies already accepted international students to apply through the GRSP website. So it's a different timing of the year that our website would be open for international students at a particular college. We'd have a provided link, and then the club committee would select a student. The student is already interested and accepted into that college. So it takes a bulk of some of the legwork from the office already out of the equation because the student is already selected, or the student has already been admitted. And it somewhat sweetens the deal. For some students, it makes the difference in whether or not they were going to come based on $11,000, $12,000 difference. I know if somebody handed my child a little bit of $11,000, $12,000, we'd say, yes, we're going there. Students arrive in August for conclave and begin classes. So from that moment, everybody's considered the same path once they arrive at conclave. And for those of you who don't know, rather than having a little secret handshake, conclave is the beginning of our GRSP season, if you will, the gathering in August that the students get to meet each other. They have a cabaret, which you'll see in some of the pictures where they give a little talent show, and basically kind of like you would 4-H camp. They get to do skits together, bond, and make friends instantly. And within this picture, it does show where GRSP has been represented. In our 75 years, we've had 3,692 alumni from 108 countries. This year, we had 96 clubs within the 3 districts commit to students. And I don't have a crystal ball. We are moving forward as planned. The pandemic was not on the radar last year, and we are certainly hoping to get past the hurdle. I know they were saying just a few minutes ago, I heard someone say, July 4th is kind of our litmus test of whether or not we're opening things up. Some countries are definitely more advanced and some are not. So I don't have that answer, but we are believing for embassies to open. We did hear that it would be around May that a lot of the embassies would open. I think your student, did they say Sweden? Where did someone tell me? John, did you tell me, or Larry, did you tell me your students from Sweden, Denmark? Okay, with food in his mouth. Great time to ask you. Sorry, Larry. We were friends until just now, weren't we? Okay. For the most part, some of it's been very interesting. I have never watched the world news as much as I have recently, just trying to figure out, and I also have a niece who's a missionary in Belgium, so we're kind of watching some of the things about embassies and what's opening and what's shutting down and stuff like that, and it changes just as everything else does on the hour. But our prospect is that we are welcoming this class this August at conclave. This is something I noticed in the first part of my job, talking about the history and the legacy. And here we have a dad and daughter who attended GRSP 30 years down the line. And I got to talk to Tanjay over a Zoom call, and he was just telling me just the benefits and the blessings that GRSP had given him. And she just has already read the quote at this other table that said the difference in the 2 students was the dad said, when I came through GRSP, every Rotarian said to me, get involved, whether it was in college, professional, private engagement. He's just found great passion in societal projects. And Charlotte said, I experienced the true Southern college life, including nightly trips to Waffle House and Walmart. So, and a little, should we ever have to play Catherine Dalton trivia, my brother was a manager for Domino's Pizza in the Walnut Avenue. Was it Walnut Avenue? Walnut Avenue. I opened the Domino's Pizza in Walnut Avenue a couple years ago. It's more than 30 years ago now. Hopefully it's still standing. Okay, this right here just is what GRSP is, just a snapshot of the student weekends. They are optional, but the students during those times are able to bond with one another. We've seen students who have countries who are basically like the Hatfields and McCoys build a friendship, which does fit into Rotary's overall impact of building goodwill and better friendships. And through this time, they are able to visit the sights and the sounds of the South, have their sweet tea, have a Thanksgiving meal, learn family traditions, learn family recipes, and at the same time, share some of their own. Some of you may even have the cookbook that we have. So all the things that embody GRSP are represented in the amount of times that clubs go out of their way to either get a student to the weekend or host the weekend. And we know that this is all a team effort. I love this picture. GRSP builds goodwill and better friendships, because right there you see just the fact that on a daily basis in Dalton, Georgia, in South Georgia, Pelham, Georgia, you might not find a student from another country come in and educate you on their home, their country, and spend holidays with you, and then later, take a piece of your heart back to their country. And so many Rotarians tell me about the times they've gone to visit their former student. So that right there is just a travel plan when the skies are back open in full force, waiting to happen. This is why I'm here today. I'm here to present to you a check of $1,520, and that's because your club actively donates to GRSP, and individually, those are the levels that you can reach, which are similar to Rotary International. And in your club, if you have more than 50% per capita donations, you do receive an incentive check. So President Ricky, here's $1,520, and I thank you. I guess, are we supposed to smile? Thank you. I thank you, because without that to our foundation, we would not be able to do what we do. And in this first picture, the class of 65, 66, I love just the cultural. The one person I think is wearing, oh, he's in the back. He went to Georgia Tech and he was wearing Dutch wooden clogs. I'm like, wonder how that would go over. And in that, not as well, but it's just very interesting. This is another reason why I'm here, and it's on your table. This summer, we will be celebrating 75 years, and our celebration at Conclave will be considered Generations of Generosity. And in that, we have partnered with the Courtyard Marriott, downtown Thomasville, to feature the GRSP Peace Plaza and Will Watt Memorial Fountain. The fountain is at the center of downtown Thomasville, and it anchors one end of the street. And it will have a historic marker that has the history of GRSP on one side, and on the other side, it will have a bust of Will Watt, our founder, and some information there. So we do have the opportunity to put GRSP on the map. And so from your $1,500, you can always recycle that and donate back to the Peace Plaza. And anything that you do give this year before the end of your Rotary year, if you mark it for the fountain, it also double dips. You're able to do the cash value to put your club on the map, and you can also get GRSP dollars. But matching points do not contribute to this. Hopefully that makes sense to somebody out there. But at the same time, we'll take anything. I appreciate it. And in this, we are just trying to this is the first time that GRSP will be on the Georgia state map on a historical marker. And so I'm always appreciative for that opportunity. And I heard somebody mention they like to play. I'm married to an avid golfer. We live on a golf course community. And my husband is counting the days to August 19th because he has not played Glenarvan Country Club in Thomasville, a historic, one of the older courses in the state, and it's well manicured. And so he's looking forward to sunny skies and a good day in hopefully he'll bring that little fan that goes on the golf cart because I'm sure it'll be nice and balmy. But for those of you who have never been, I certainly will be sending out some information when we've got some closer to this summer or probably in May about the tournament to save the date. And you do not have to attend Conclave to come play in the tournament, although we'd certainly love for you to. We'd certainly love for you to come down and visit. Conclave is open to all Rotarians, and we would love to see you. And this has, you are District 6910. Your chair is not Ian Bond, but he's my friend, so you can just see his name real quick. Your district chair is James McCoy, should you need him, and he is the Forsyth County Chamber Director, so he's certainly not hard to find. And the reason I put the GRSP trustee on this, I should put GRSP Conclave trustee. Scott Rich is in charge of our conclave. And if you need any information about Thomasville, you can certainly find him, find me. My cards are on the table. And finally, here I am. There's how to get me. My cards are on the table. And if you have any leftover cash, stocks, bonds, real estate, anything you'd like, I'm really not kidding. I have no problems promoting GRSP throughout the state because I do know only 3 of us are on the payroll and everybody else is volunteer. And to be able to have a company, have a program 75 years and running with a strategic plan to be able to include us going into the future to grow our foundation, and part of the direct college connection is to be able to get students from countries where Rotary isn't represented to diversify. There's just a bigger picture here of what we're doing, and I'm certainly encouraged by that. I thank you for the opportunity to come and squeeze in, and thank you, Rory, thank you for sharing your time with me, and Ricky also for giving me the chance to plug. And I will be around after if you have questions or anything, so I don't want to take up that time now, but I certainly appreciate your love and support for your students and our program and what we do. And I believe in what we do. And I thank you for your support.
Catherine, Lori, thank you both for being here. GRSP is important to our club, but we've really enjoyed the students over the years. It's always interesting to see what the students from other countries getting put into North Georgia live. That's and seeing their reaction. That's always it's a fun reaction, and we learn a lot as well. Our next speaker, Brian Croft, is agreed. He's come and tell us about the crisis line. So Brian's a resident of Dalton since 1995. Is the husband of his better half, Shell Croft. Brian is a proud father to William Croft and a bonus dad to Noah, Emmeline, and Elizabeth Underwood. Did I get her name right? Brian serves as the facilities manager at Julian People's Funeral Home and is, in his off time, a volunteer at Providence Ministries, a Conasauga Family Violence Alliance member, a board member of Family Frameworks, the community service chair for our very own Rotary Club of Dalton, and a current participant in the 2021 class of Leadership Dalton. With over 10 years of counseling experience as a certified addiction counselor, Brian is also a full-time paraprofessional with Benchmark Human Services. Benchmark Human Services contracts the mobile crisis team for the Georgia Crisis Access Line, known by some as the Suicide Prevention Hotline. Driven by the suicide of his wife, Christine, and Brian has become a passionate about providing care to those in crisis and the family who experience loss. So, Brian, we look forward to hearing your speech. Let me share this screen. All right. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. This thing's not working, so I guess you can hear me good back there. Fantastic. I'll try to speak as deep as Smitty is capable of. The opportunity to speak was just presented, I think, through a meeting we were having one afternoon, and just saying, hey, we got the date open. And I work with paraprofessionals, licensed counselors, licensed clinical social workers, and things of that nature. They contract with GCAL. I actually represent Benchmark Human Services. Their information is on your table, and also a little bit of Benchmark swag in the form of a little portable office kit there. But Benchmark has the contract for, she showed that region earlier. It's almost half of that same region for us being 6910. We are all the way from Dade County, I believe, all the way to Hart County is the region that we have for the Georgia Crisis and Access Line. Myself and my mobile crisis team, we go for all the way from Floyd County all the way to Dade County. And so it's a good little area. You get a call in the middle of the night, middle of the day, whatever it is, and we mobilize and we go to their location, whether they're on the side of the road, whether they're on their job in the hospital. We've interviewed in the FBI questioning room over here in Dalton, and we interviewed an individual in the Food Lion parking lot one time. So just wherever somebody's having their crisis is where we get to assist them at. The crisis line is a collaboration with the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. And I don't have to tell anybody probably the climate of our country, the climate of our whole country right now with the pandemic and just changing all the dynamics of family and interaction and social. These numbers have really gone up over the last year or so as far as our calls, people being isolated at home, maybe fall into depression. Right now, we have a lot of calls through individuals that are maybe being a victim of social media, being slandered or being exposed, or these young teen girls, they might think they have a boyfriend they're comfortable with, and they might send him a picture, and then next door he's mad, he puts a picture on Facebook. I've had, I want to say 5 to 6 of those calls in the 4 years I've been with Benchmark, where we get to the house and the individual is suicidal because she feels so exploited and hurt, and rightfully so. I'm acting like this thing's still working. I'm sorry, I need to step away from that. But my personal involvement, I know I'm jumping around a little bit, my personal involvement this job came as an opportunity to me through some individuals. I used to contract with the Georgia Department of Corrections for their day report center, and some of the professionals that I worked with there ended up working with Benchmark, and they called me and asked me if I wanted to come on board. And when I heard their purpose, and kind of like Rotary, when I heard the purpose of in the very beginning of their polio connection and helping those stricken with polio, and wanted to see how they can help individuals having an aunt with polio, I was attracted to Rotary. Taking this phone call and then absorbing all of it, my own personal connection, I had a wife that I was married to. Her name was Christine, and well, I thought that was my last wife. I thought life was great, and we were living in 2 different worlds, evidently. And that's what mental health kind of does for a lot of folks. It could be the person sitting right beside you, and you truly don't know what they're going through, what they're experiencing. It could be a financial devastation. It could be a relationship devastation. It could be simple mental health. I say simple, it's very complex. Mental health is, of course. So you never know what somebody's going through. Having the opportunity to work with the Georgia Crisis and Access Line has been a blessing to me. I've seen so many people, as I said, all the way from Floyd to Dade, and seeing different environments, situations, individuals. And it's a huge network that starts, like if somebody was to call, if you did have a family member or friend, or if you know somebody who might benefit from this card, you can give them this card, and they would call that line. And that doesn't mean we would show up at their house immediately. They call the Georgia Crisis and Access Line. There's a professional on there that's able to assess the individual, ask them numerous amount of questions, and get the crisis access line almost is a contradiction, because the time it takes from the moment of that phone call for somebody to show up at your house, the crisis is almost diverted sometimes. So let me rebuttal by saying, or put this in there. If you're having a real crisis, you want to dial 911. We tell people that immediately every time. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you have an individual in front of you that's saying, I feel like taking my own life, or maybe they're hallucinating, delusional, schizophrenic, and they're having an episode right in front of you and it's uncontainable, dial 911, allow them to get medical professionals there, take an emergency room. But a lot of times people end up using this crisis line. They'll call, it's fielded in Atlanta. They'll take the phone call. They'll have the entire conversation. Sometimes it doesn't always have to be the individual calling for themselves. Sometimes it's family members, friends. We've had people call from another state and say, I don't know what's going on with Jason. Sorry, Jason. But I just looked up and you were there. But Jason's not himself today. I'm really concerned. He's made these statements, and these statements, and I'm in Connecticut. and Jason's in Dalton, can you please, can something happen? And they can, we can do a welfare check, go by. And the thing about a crisis and the thing about mental health, unfortunately, not everybody has to receive services. Not everybody wants the services. We show up at Jason's house and he looks at me like I'm crazy. Say, Brian, I have no desire to talk to you as an individual, as an adult. They have that right to say so. And our hands are kind of tied unless an individual displays suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation, and makes and voices that, and maybe they're if they are having a mental health breakdown, their delusion, their schizophrenia would show visible to us. We can still take action with what's presented in front of us, but I can't go by hearsay what Jason's family said in Connecticut. So when they show up and Jason just looks at me and smiles and said, not here, we have to say, okay, thank you, sir, and we walk away. So crisis diverted, maybe not. Some people are good at camouflaging and know what to say whenever there's something going on and they feel like their personal rights might be violated, and maybe not even they're not at the point where they want to discuss their situation or their problem. But Benchmark's been around since 1960, and they actually started by helping individuals with developmental disabilities. And so they were serving the community on that level, and then it graduated to something else. Now it's considered a blended, we consider ourselves a blended mobile crisis team, because we also have the contracts for the state of Georgia for developmental disabilities, autism, and mental health issues, of course. So right now we see a lot of young kids early on with autism. We might even see maybe an individual that was neglected and never received services for their autism. And now as they progress, and so has the autism, they're in their 20s now and have never received any services. And it gets worse and worse if nobody's worked with those individuals along the way to help them develop skills, to understand their language of communication. I'm not educating anybody in the room, I'm sure, but autism individuals, they have their own way of communicating. Sometimes it's by sense of touch or a motion that they make, or a gesture that may not be a word. And so if somebody's not working alongside these individuals over time, to an average individual, it may look like they're having mental health, or they're just being angry and aggressive, but they're really truly trying to communicate and say, I have a broken tooth in the back of my mouth possibly, and that's why I'm mad, and shaking the table and turning things upside down, and everybody else is looking at his anger. And so the individuals that we work with are able to go in, assess, and get the individual to the proper services. So it's not always suicidal and homicidal, a lot of mental health issues as well. Some of the most common asked questions, I guess, are how do I get help for crisis? As I said earlier, if it's immediate problem, 911. But if you have the opportunity to call the crisis line or given the information to individuals that might need it. What does a mobile crisis unit do? As I said a moment ago, we do show up with a licensed counselor or a licensed clinical social worker, and they're able to make the assessment and make the judgment call, even to write a 1013 if need be. So if we show up on a call that an individual is suicidal, homicidal, they've expressed to us their desire to not want to live, we write a 1013, which is a legal document in the state of Georgia. And we were talking about that a little bit ago with Ms. Bates. That's also one of her roles that she has as a judge, that she's able to do the same thing. But we can write that 1013, and at that point, the individual would either be transported by law enforcement. Each county is different. Even though I say it's a collaborative thing statewide, each county kind of has their own way of handling 1013s. Some will allow them to be transported by ambulance. Some insist that they be transported by law enforcement. But as we've worked together with the law enforcement, they have officers, most of them have officers on staff that are called CIT officers, which are trained in mental health and being able to understand that they're not dealing with a criminal or a criminal act, but they're dealing with an individual that is having a mental health or a psychotic breakdown. So they handle them with kid gloves, and they assure them they're not going to be arrested, and they do still transport them in the back of the vehicle to the hospital. At the hospital, they would be evaluated for any health issues, of course, and monitored. And then there's a statewide board. It's a mental health board, and so the emergency room is able to put them on the board and waiting for a bed at one of the locations. And that's kind of the. I was talking with Miss Sherry. Am I allowed to call you Miss Sherry? Yeah, I was talking with her earlier. There's just not enough beds in Georgia right now to fill the need, and it's in long-term needs as well. It's kind of heartbreaking when you see it up close and personal and on a daily basis, because a lot of the people that we see are repeat individuals that are having different breakdowns at different times of the year, whatever the case may be. So the hospital, they clear them, they put them on the board, and then the individual is taken from there to what they call the crisis stabilization unit, which you'll see a psychiatrist, a doctor, and counselors, and they'll be able to assess them the best they can, make the judgment call for what their diagnosis could be or possibly is, and they refer them to services as they leave. And that's probably one of the breakdowns in this whole process, because it's the follow through on the services that really needs, you just can't walk everybody. I was, as most of you in this room know, I was with Providence for several years, and as a counselor. And then when my wife took her life, I kind of stepped back away from the counseling thing because it really affected me differently. I didn't want to be responsible for somebody's failure or success. I took it that personal. So when I left Providence here recently, that was the reason why I said, you know what, I don't want to be responsible for other individuals' failure or success. And I like to be the ambulance. And that's what this job still allows me to do. I feel like I get gratification out of assisting and helping people. And if you walk away from me saying, I didn't understand a word Brian said, just understand this, that we are the ambulance for mental health. That's about the best way I know how to describe it. And I like that role. I like showing up when somebody's in need. I like showing up when there's an emergency and someone's having a crisis, to be able to be a voice of reason, compassion, care, and get them to the help that they need. I really enjoy that part. I just don't like being the long-term solution anymore. I used to be really passionate about that, but it hit too close to home too many times. And so I just know my role and my limitations. And that's a Clint Eastwood quote, I think, right? Man's got to know his limitations. So the crisis and access line is an enjoyable place to work, believe it or not, because you actually, when I walk away from a call, I feel like we did something for the individual right now. The long-term solution, as we said, that's kind of the real gray zone for our state. And I don't think it's just to our state. I think it's nationwide. What being able to plug people into long-term mental health services that they would really benefit from seems to be a real challenge for the people that we serve. So the crisis line, being able to help individuals in their moment of need. I don't have any scientific proof to back this up, but when I talk to individuals about drugs and alcohol, I always say that I personally believe there's not a household affected either directly or indirectly by the use of drugs and alcohol. I'm almost starting to lean towards that statement in the mental health arena, as I've only been in it for 4 years now, that there's almost not a household in America that's not affected directly or indirectly by mental health, suicide, and things that are encapsulated with the crisis line and the people and the populations that we serve. But any questions on the crisis line? I danced around there a little bit and got a little transparent, maybe more than I should have, but yes.
We talked somewhat about the cost of the mental health services in our community. Recently, I understand that Hamilton has discontinued their outpatient behavioral health service. I found that to be very disappointing.
Yes, and what was it called again? Right at the Westcott. Yeah, Westcott. And yes, and I've heard that too. And unfortunately across the state, budget cuts, state cuts, or whatever else. So what Milledgeville used to be one of the largest mental health facilities in the state of Georgia. There's 1 or 2 others in there. And back when they did those big tax cuts, what's been a decade or more now, a lot of those agencies and facilities got shut down. And those people, they didn't disappear. They're still in our community, they're still around, and they still need help on a daily basis. And so that's part of what we get to do as well. Like I said, we do see a lot of the same people. So I don't know the answer. I wish there was and I guess it always boils down to this. So unfortunately, that seems to be the answer.
What's the nearest one? Is it Rome?
There's Rome. We do have a crisis stabilization here in Dalton called ADAC. Well, it used to be called ADAC. It's Highland Rivers. Those who've been around for a long time know it as ADAC. But yes, next one would be Rome. I believe you're correct. Dalton. Yes.
Ron, I don't want to open a can of worms here, but is this the kind of concept that might, and I've said might, have come into play with the recent shootings in our country? And I'm assuming a lot, so bear with me. That the person that
has carried out some of these. If someone had said, he didn't act right this morning, he didn't act right yesterday, there's something going on. Let me call the crisis hotline.
Right.
I don't know, I'm
And to say
jumping
recent,
into a minefield there.
no, in recent, past, I mean, future, I mean, you could say it's connected to all those, I guess, at some level, but if I'm not mistaken, the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities and GCAL initially were engaged to reduce recidivism to emergency rooms. Because as they shut these larger facilities down that were addressing strictly mental health, now they're not there. They're still in our population. So when they had a crisis, that's where they showed up, was at the emergency room. And a doctor looked at them and said, I can't stitch that. I'm just trying to make light of it a little bit. And so that's where these came in at. I believe that's where, from the big picture, that's where that was presented. Reduce recidivism to the hospitals, still engage with the individuals. We do, and I will say this, and maybe I left this part out. When we show up at a location or call, one or two things happen. We either leave with a safety plan in place, or we leave with the individual being hospitalized and taken to the hospital. And a safety plan is something that we contract with them. We sit down and we say, this is where we would like for you to show up tomorrow. This is the agency to go to. We have them sign a release of information so we can share the information that we witnessed at that moment with that agency. And so we try to collaborate with everybody and try to get them to follow up services. But again, some people don't, a lot of individuals don't have transportation. They don't even have a vehicle. They don't have a family member or support that's helping them along the way. Some of them really have their hands tied and they're in a mental health situation. It's really quite sad sometimes. It really is. Any other questions? Sherry, did I not cover something that you were thinking of, or I know you deal with this a good bit in our community through the courts and the mental health and having agencies to refer them to. Is that big?
It's a great need, I'll say that.
Yes.
Rome used to have a mental health wing. They do not anymore. You've got Highland Rivers has the location here. There's one in Cedartown. The system is just really broken. There's a huge population out there that have a great need for services, but not a whole lot available. And people don't know how to access it. And if you're generally talking about people that have diagnoses or that are they're drug addicted or alcohol addicted, they still have all their rights. And so you can't make them do something. They're not acting right, well, are they threatening themselves? The courts the probate court steps in if it's a situation where it's an emergency. They're threatening suicide. They kissed their child goodbye and said, I'm going in the woods with my gun and I'm going to shoot myself. We step in and get involved and get law enforcement involved. Short of that, though, there's a whole array of people short of that need help, and families are desperate, and there's just an absence of viable options for a lot of these people.
And I couldn't have said it better myself. No, I tell you, and you see it firsthand every day too. I only get a few calls a week and I go to different areas. Like I said, I've only been doing it for about 4 years. I feel like we have helped the individual in the moment, but truly I wish there was an extension or a long-term plan where we could say, hey, now you get the long-term care that you really need. And it's just not there. It's pretty sad.
We do have mental health court now, so that if the person has committed a crime, sometimes the families will come to me and they'll say, what am I going to have to do? Wait until they have hurt somebody or committed a crime before I can get any help. Well, that's about it. I mean, I can't step in and take somebody's rights away just because you're telling me he's acting weird. I mean, so anyway, it's a very, very broken system, and there's a lot of need out there.
So we help the ones we can and hope that something unfolds in the future for long-term solutions for other individuals. But as she just said, it's not illegal to be weird. It's just not illegal. And so there's, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Any other questions? And I'm glad to be part of such a great organization as Rotary as well. So thank you.
Well, Brian, thank you for the service you do to our community, and thank you for all you do at the club. Thank you for being part of the board. And just a reminder, we do have a board meeting right after this, so that's a good segue into that. So board meeting, our next meeting will be April the 20th. And right now, what I'm planning on doing is doing an R&R where we can just all get together and talk. It's been a year since we got to do that, and I think it's time for us to sit down and catch up with each other since over the past year. But we'll end with the pledge to the allegiance to the flag. And yes.
I'm actually making an announcement on behalf of the Whitfield Education Foundation. And I was directed, we have a golf tournament, golf tournament coming up on April 26th. If you'd like to participate or like to sponsor, even if you're not a golfer, you can sponsor. We love you to sponsor. We're giving this other message. We'd love you to do that. And I have some information if you'd like to check it out.
Thank you. I was going to pull up a flag. There's not a flag in this room. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Things say, is it the truth? Is it fair and all concerned? Will it build goodwill and build friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? All right, thank you guys. See you next week.